Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna, and this is your place for all your filthy casual takes on the world of sports for you fans out there like you and me. And this is episode number 284. And in this episode, we're here to do a weekly roundup of week one of the 2025 NFL season. And I say it was a mixed bag of sorts for this first week of the current season in the NFL. We're on the road to Super Bowl 59. No, Super Bowl 60 in February. We're officially in the real phase of this current NFL season. So yeah, like I said, it is a mixed bag for this current week, but at least we got two very exciting games to round out this first week, and we'll get into that in just a bit. So for the newcomers here listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, make sure for those that are new, hit the subscribe button on YouTube and hit the follow button, whether it's on the audio platforms, on my socials at Very Cold Lasagna. And for the audio listeners, rate and review the show. And for the YouTube watchers, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And with that being said, let's get it right into talking about week one. And I know I'm late and very out of date, talking all things about the first week in the NFL. But it is what it is. Faced some technical issues, but that's on me. I take some accountability, unlike a certain CEO of the WWE lately and once again. But that's besides the point. So week one, here we were on of the NFL season, and yeah, there were a lot of interesting headlines going into this, and a lot of questions that needed to be answered. But as I say and a lot of people say, when it comes to week one, it doesn't define your season. It doesn't make you great. It doesn't do a lot of things. It doesn't do a lot of things to, like I said, define your season. Define your season, make or break, and just in general, like stand out. There's still 17 weeks to come for the regular season and for its fans. So still plenty to figure out. And yeah, 1 week isn't supposed to make you all giddy. I mean, sure, it for some fans it will, but for others, this is supposed to be the figuring out phase. Like, what exactly could you look forward to, and what needs to be fixed as the season rolls on. So it all began with the kickoff game in Philadelphia, as the reigning, defending, undisputed Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles took on the Dallas Cowboys. They've had a lot of things going on in that game, because there was some pre-game stupidity and then a mid-game weather delay. But in the end, Jalen Hurts made the plays that mattered most. The Eagles went on to barely beat the Cowboys 24-20 in a pretty good game to kick off the season. And what I'll do for each of these games is give you my one big takeaway for each team. So I won't focus on specific teams. So I'm going to focus on every single team and try to give you my biggest takeaway as possible. And I'll start with the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys, they surprisingly exceeded my expectations in this game. And they surprisingly hung in there with a strong Eagles team. But man, they could have won this game. They had many opportunities to win this game. Dak Prescott, in his return from injury last year, he played well coming off that injury. And yeah, like I said, the offense as a whole had many chances to win this game, but man, CeeDee Lamb, he let three potential catches just fall out of his hands, and especially on that last drive where the Cowboys were near the red zone, and they could have extended their last gas drive. CeeDee Lamb couldn't catch the ball. He couldn't catch the ball like the previous two times he couldn't catch the ball. I wouldn't say he single-handedly cost his team the win, but he pretty much was one of the main factors of why the Cowboys lost that game. So yeah, the Cowboys surprisingly gave the Eagles a run for their money, more than expected, but they could have won that game had CD made those catches that mattered. Meanwhile, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They nearly lost this game. And that was because of some pre-game stupidity that I mentioned earlier. That pre-game stupidity came from their defensive lineman, one of their key defensive linemen, Jalen Carter. And I don't understand why he had to go and do this. And the NBC broadcast showed how this all came about. Like, some people were saying, "Oh, Dak Prescott started this." When Dak Prescott was just merely, spitting on the ground, not directly at Jalen Carter. You know how some quarterbacks just spit on the ground, but then Jalen Carter, he took offense to as if he was getting spat. Dak Prescott was spitting at his direction, so he decided to go up to Dak Prescott and spit at him directly, like right in front of the officials, mind you, like right in front of a referee, like right before the very first snap of the game. And yeah, that was a very great decision to start the season, and what a great way to go off, enjoy the rest of your day, and essentially give yourself a day off. So yeah, great decision there by Jalen Carter, huh? But yeah, and you look at the Eagles in general. Sure, they won this game, but it nearly cost them. Carter's stupidity nearly cost them, and it put them in a severe bind all game. Like the defensive line, they barely got to Dak Prescott, and the secondary notably also struggled. Opposite Cooper DeJean, yeah, like Quinyon Mitchell struggled. Adoree Jackson really struggled in this game, but also keep in mind they were dealing with a corner group that still is finding its way opposite Cooper DeJean. And also surprisingly, like I said, Quinyon Mitchell, who was supposed to be that 1-2 duo with Cooper DeJean, he struggled in this game. So, like I said, there's still some adjusting that they need to adapt to, and maybe that will come next week against Kansas City in a Super Bowl rematch. So speaking of Kansas City, that the second game we're going to be talking about is the game in Brazil that happened free on YouTube, as the LA Chargers took on the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is probably one of the most surprising results of the week, because Justin Herbert, he threw for 3 touchdowns, and he got a big third down conversion under 2 minutes left in the game. And the Chargers upset the AFC champion Chiefs 27-21. Probably one of the most surprising results of week 1. So yeah, for the Kansas City Chiefs, they still managed to come back in this game because Patrick Mahomes does Patrick Mahomes things. But it came at a cost of losing another receiver. We all know that Rashee Rice was suspended for 6 games for the incident that occurred a year or 2 ago with this hit and run thing, if that was remember correctly, or his some kind of automobile thing that I can't remember what it was. But either way, the receiver core that the Chiefs were already banged up in, it took another major hit. Xavier Worthy suffered a dislocated shoulder in the second quarter, I think it was. And yeah, he was ruled out for the game, and he's out indefinitely. Now, Adam Schefter and Eden Rappaport, they're saying that surgery might be an option, but for now, he's out indefinitely. They don't know when he'll be back, and the Chiefs don't know when he'll be back. So either way, someone's got to step up in that receiving room. Probably the next man up, Juju Smith-Schuster. Meanwhile, for the LA Chargers, nice game for them. Very nice game to start up the season, and I like the way that they played with Justin Herbert and that receiving core that many people talked about that was a very big question mark, but they stepped up, especially Quentin Johnson. And obviously you have the name I can't get in the top of my head right now. Ladd McConkey. There we go. And then Jim Harbaugh coached this team along with the rest of his coaching staff very aggressively. They were a very aggressive team. They didn't get too conservative, other than a weird decision. But in pretty bad one by their running back towards the end of the first half. But either way, they still played like a very aggressive team. They still had Justin Herbert throwing in the fourth quarter, like under 5 minutes left to go. Pretty smart decision, if you ask me. I was like a little bit questioning myself though, but it turned out to be a pretty smart decision. Like they didn't like just run the ball on like first and second downs. They kept throwing it. They just kept throwing it, and it turned out to be worked out in their favor. So good for the Chargers. They got a key division win early, and they're gonna keep it rolling with 2 more division games with the Raiders on tap on a Monday night next week, this Monday, and then they continue it with their home opener against Denver in week 3. So a lot of more key games for the Chargers as they look to go up 2-0 and then maybe for them 3-0. When it's all said and done, they could have a 3-0 division lead by the end of week 3. So then we look at the Sunday slate of games there with the early morning portion. The Tampa Bay Bucks took on the Atlanta Falcons in another division matchup. And this was a big matchup for Michael Penix Jr. And I'd say he played relatively solid in his first game as a full-time starter. He had a key late rushing touchdown. And it seemed like it was going to seal the deal for the Falcons, but unfortunately that was undone by the 2-minute drill that Baker Mayfield led, and he threw a big touchdown pass to his rookie Emeka Egbuka with a minute left to go, and the Bucks went on to win the game after Younghoe Koo of the Falcons. He missed the game-winning field goal, and yeah, Atlanta lost that game to Tampa 23-20. And yeah, when you look at that Bucks team, yeah, the Egbuka pick is not so questionable now, is it? When I talked about it in my season preview for Tampa Bay, a lot of people were questioning about the Bucks picking Egbuka, however you pronounce his last name, because that receiving room was pretty crowded. Yeah, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, and now you add in Egbuka, but you have to remember, and I realized this like a couple of days ago before the season opener. Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan were out with injury, and Mike Evans. When you look at that game against Atlanta, Mike Evans and just the entire offense in general, they were struggling for most of that game. Like, and Mike Evans was shut down. Like, not like with injury, but like he was getting shut down with whoever he was being guarded against. And Egbuka really stepped up to the plate. Like, he was left open most of the time. Egbuka really delivered 2 big touchdowns when Baker Mayfield needed him the most in Egbuka's real debut. So yeah, expect Egbuka to continue to be a driving factor in this offense, even when Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan come back from their injuries. So yeah, that Egbuka pick's not looking so bad now for the Falcon, not for the Bucks, is it? For all those critics out there. Meanwhile, for the Falcons, sure, Younghoe Koo let head coach Raheem Morris down, but let's look at that defense more, because that defense actually played really well in this game for 3+ quarters. But when it came to crunch time, they really let them down. They really let the Falcons down. They really let themselves down. They failed to put the Bucks away, like in the 2-minute drill. They let Baker slice and dice them all over the place, and they allowed that go-ahead touchdown, and that pretty much sealed it. That pretty much sealed it. And then, of course, you had the failed field goal from Younghoe Koo that he missed wide right. And yeah, it could have been a different result for the Falcons had they just held Baker in the Bucks like they did for most of the game. Yeah, I'm sure Raheem Morris is pretty much talking to his team and how they got to be better than what they did towards the end of the game, as they now head to Minnesota for a primetime showdown with the Vikings. Now let's look at another division game. There was a lot of them this week, as you had an AFC North showdown between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. So it was a pretty slow game, a pretty kind of low-scoring game for the most part. So for Cleveland, they had a missed extra point from the rookie kicker, Andre Smites. And yeah, that ended up being the downfall for the Browns. Very pivotal for the Browns. As Cincinnati, that allowed them to, take the lead because Eric McPherson's own field goal that was successful, and they got an interception from DJ Turner, and that gave them the division win, 17-16. So starting with the Bengals, it wasn't pretty, but they finally started off the season with the win. Haven't had a lot of success with winning their season openers in the last couple of years, but yeah, they finally got one here. To get some positivity going to open their season. But yeah, it was good for them. Again, wasn't pretty because their offense sputtered in the second half, but they did much better on defense, pressuring Joe Flacco heavily and got those two interceptions, including the one to pretty much seal the win. So the Bengals should feel a little bit good about themselves. Obviously, some things to clean up as they open their home opener against the Jaguars. So at least for now, they should feel a little confident going into week 2. Now for the Browns, typical skid marks to open the season. The team as a whole, though, they surprisingly started off good for a chunk of the game, especially on defense. But like with Atlanta, when it mattered most, they failed. And they went back to their typical skid marked habits. Joe Flacco's receivers, they dropped multiple catchable balls. Then you had the failed missed extra point from Andre Smites, as well as the go-ahead field goal that would have put gave the lead back to the Browns. And then you had Joe Flacco's 2 interceptions, including the game-sealing one. Typical skid marks. If things had gone differently, hey, you would have been talking about a 1-0 Browns team that would have upset Cincinnati. Then we look at another surprising result that happened in week 1. The Indianapolis Colts taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Colts scoring on every single possession against Miami and pretty much shutting them down. And they forced 3 turnovers on Tua Tagovailoa, and they completely beat them down 33-8. So when you look at the let's look at the Colts first, because let's do the reverse order first. Because when you look at the Indianapolis Colts, there were a lot of question marks about giving Daniel Jones the starting job over third-year quarterback Anthony Richardson. People were ranting and talking about their disappointment about giving Daniel Jones the starting job over Anthony Richardson because you need to develop this quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and you need to give him more playing time to give him more experience. And while I agree to some extent, still the man can't stay healthy. And sure, Daniel Jones, he's still Danny Pennies because of his turnover habits, but it was still pretty surprising how efficient he played against this Miami team. And yeah, this team as a whole, especially defensively against Tua and in that offense, I'm surprised at how well they managed to rattle Tua. And yeah, there's just a collective team effort. They played pretty well in this first game. Now let's see how they translate that against a much better team in the Denver Broncos next week, because that'll be a much tougher challenge, especially with that Denver defense. Now let's look at the Miami Dolphins. Man, for how much Tua and the starters played in the preseason, how do you look that unprepared and that disinterested in that game? Tua, got completely rattled, got completely sacked a lot in that game, and he turned the ball over 3 total times, 2 interceptions included, and he just looked so out of place in that game. So if Tua plays that terrible against bad teams, and I'm not saying next week against the Patriots is a bad team, but they're still rebuilding. Just imagine how the Miami Dolphins will do against the better teams on their schedule this season. And like I said in my season preview, If they do really bad or they do just mid, yeah, this could be the end of Mike McDaniel in Miami. So now moving on to the land of all elite as the Jacksonville Jaguars took on the Carolina Panthers. And yeah, they were ushering in a new head coach in Liam Cohen, and it kicked off with the blaze. The Jaguars scored on 4 of their first 5 drives, and they put the Kitties and Blues to sleep, 26-10, despite a weather delay. They also got a weather delay themselves that day. So for the Carolina Panthers, yeah, it's pretty much the same old for them. Bryce Young, unfortunately, couldn't build on his solid finish to last year because, yeah, he pretty much saw like the same old results from the first part last year. Completely struggling with throws and turnovers, and yeah, he just got rattled completely. Now, in fairness, his teammates didn't help him out either, especially in an offensive line that just couldn't protect Bryce Young. Now, like, it's weird because they invested in the offensive line in the offseason, but they didn't show up to play. And, you know, looking at the Carolina Panthers next game against the Cardinals, yeah, that's not going to get any easier. Meanwhile, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, sure, they won this game, but at times it wasn't pretty. And, you know, just look at this team. There's still plenty of learning to move forward. Trevor Lawrence played okay, but it's still clear that he was trying to get used to Cohen's scheme, despite how much he played in the preseason. But the stars of the game for Jacksonville was that running back duo of Travis Etienne and Brian Thomas Jr. They had a field day in crushing the Panthers' run defense, which led to one of the running backs in the rotation getting traded, and we'll talk about that much later on in our last segment of this episode. But the Jags defense also looked like a much different one in a positive way for now, as they were like flying all over the place. They were pretty much like hornets. They were like flies on the Panthers offense. So they played relatively good, but let's see if all this holds up against a better team in Joe Burrow and the Bengals next week. Then in Foxborough, you had 2 teams that were kind of in a retooling, rebuilding phase, as Pete Carroll returned to Foxborough with the Las Vegas Raiders, taking on the New England Patriots with their own new head coach, Mike Vrabel. But one of these teams had to win and one of these teams had to lose. And in the end, it was Pete Carroll's team that came out with the win, thanks to Geno Smith's touchdown to Trey Tucker and Ashton Genty's own touchdown, giving this new Raiders offense the win in a decent debut. So, unfortunately, the Raiders' win came at a cost, with Brock Bowers having to leave the game with a knee injury. But it doesn't seem too bad. So it's day to day. So that's at least some good news for the Raiders. And their offense managed to survive. The offense managed to survive that game, and their defense did also just enough to pull out the win. Meanwhile, for the New England Patriots, they didn't look as good in this game, offensively, especially because this was expected, to be honest with you. Drake May in his second year, he's still learning a new scheme under returning offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, and he also still has a lot of new pieces, like new receivers, especially with Stephon Diggs being there, a new offensive line that has a rookie left tackle in Will Campbell, and obviously, like I said, the new coaching staff. But fortunately for the Patriots, they'll have a chance to take a step in continuing to shake off some of those growing pains when they go to Miami and take on a Dolphins team that, they got their asses handed to them to the Colts. So even with that game, though, Patriots fans should expect a little bit more growing pains as Drake May continues to settle into this new coaching staff. Meanwhile, down in the Big Hard, you had the Arizona Cardinals take on the New Orleans Saints. The Cards defense, they rattled Spencer Rattler when it mattered most, especially in the final minutes of the game, preventing a game-tying touchdown and holding on to win 20-13. For the Cardinals, not too much to take away from this game because, is kind of relatively uneventful. The offense did get off to a good start, but they kind of fell off down the stretch. But when they did have their good moments, Kyler Murray looked very solid because of his playmaking. Not just to Trey McBride, not just to James Conner, but finally what we've been looking for, his connection with Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's the results that we have been looking for. And it is well apparent in the offseason. He also himself had a long run prior to the fourth quarter, but again, they cooled down. They all cooled down in the fourth. So they at least should still feel good about the results, about their offensive performance, at least prior to the fourth quarter. And they should at least feel a little bit better to do better on both sides of the ball when they face a Panthers team that just got beaten down by Jacksonville in their opener. Looking at the Saints on the other side of the coin, I'm a little surprised that Spencer Rattler did better than expected, but it wasn't always a good thing. He at least managed to move the offense okay. He didn't turn the ball over, but at the same time, he didn't notch a touchdown himself, whether it was rushing or passing. So there's that. And he also put his receivers in danger by feeding them the ball like right when there's an Arizona defender like down their neck. So that was not always exactly a good thing. And then he generally didn't also take too many big shots downfield. Like he didn't throw it like 10 or 20 plus yards down the field. And he also whiffed the game time touchdown at the end to Juwan Johnson, his tight end. So it's only week one. We still have yet to see what Spencer Rattler's like true ceiling will be. Let's see what Spencer Rattler will have to provide when he takes on a 49ers team that is going to probably be banged up going to next week. Then we have a interesting matchup as the Aaron Rodgers led Steelers went to the Gang Green side of the Meadowlands, taking on the Jets. Yeah, two quarterbacks on new teams. On the flip side of the coin, you had Aaron Rodgers returning to the green side of the Meadowlands, taking on Justin Fields, who was previously on the Steelers in a matchup of irony. But in the end, Chris Boswell, he hit a 60-yard field goal, and that gave the Steelers a late lead that they managed to hold on to, which gave Aaron Rodgers the revenge win over his old team, 34-32. So for the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, he looked good in that game, even though he took some needless sacks. But he also made some nice chunk throws to keep drives going before capping it off with 4 signature touchdown throws that we had seen Aaron Rodgers do. You hadn't seen him do in a while prior to 2024. So he looked good for now. It's only 1 week, but it seems like Aaron Rodgers looks very comfortable in the black and gold. Let's see how he does next week against Seattle in that defense, but at least promising results for now. Meanwhile, for the New York Jets, Justin Fields also looked a little promising, even in defeat, but it's still too early to judge how Justin Fields will eventually fare. But based on this first showing, I'd say he impressed with mostly good passing decisions and his scrambling ability to keep the Jets alive and almost the win. He had 2 rushing touchdowns to show for it. The one knock I will have against Justin Fields was the 4th and 2 on the Jets' last gasp, where he didn't run for it, and I questioned him why he didn't run for it. We had a lot of open space, and he could have got the first down, but he didn't. But that's not here or there. So he'll get a chance to try and get an upset win over Josh Allen, the Bills, in the Jets' second home game next week. Then we travel to the nation's capital as the Commanders took on the Big Blue Giants. This was a kind of a weird game, and I'll tell you why. Because for the Commanders, they somehow kept the Giants alive in this one, but they put them away for good with a reverse end around touchdown from new commander Deebo Samuel. He helped Washington put away the Giants for good, 21-16. Looking at the Commanders first, yeah, the reason why they kept the Giants alive in this game was the linear mistakes that they made. Yeah, too many penalties. The offense slowing down. Until that Deebo Samuel touchdown. They have a Thursday night game coming up against a Packer team that just dismantled the Lions. Yeah, they can't have that. They can't make this many mistakes against a promising Packers team that just looked better defensively. Yeah, you can't have that. Meanwhile, for the New York Giants, Russell Wilson did not look great in this game. And he pretty much looked like the Russell Wilson that was, how he was late in the season with the Steelers. It was pretty much a given with how Russ couldn't get the team past midfield consistently outside of 2 field goals and pretty much their last gasp 4th down on the Commanders' 1 yard line. But in fairness, though, his O-line, it already sucked without left tackle Andrew Thomas. Yeah, it didn't help. It didn't help him either. So he's slated to start again against the Dallas Cowboys in week 2. But in my opinion, like after that, I imagine he won't be started for very long, or at least until left tackle Andrew Thomas returns. So head coach Brian Dable eventually will have to slot in rookie Jackson Dart, who did look promising in the preseason. But until then, it's going to be the Russell Wilson show. So moving on to the late afternoon slate of games, finally. In the Mile High, the Denver Broncos took on the Tennessee Titans. You can look at this as either a defensive battle or a battle of sloppy quarterback play. But either way, J.K. Dobbins put the game away in favor of Denver with a 4th quarter touchdown run, and the Denver defense got a final stop on Cam Ward as Denver put away the Titans 20-12. This was a pretty rough start for Cam Ward's debut, regular season debut. Now, he did have a nice few passes that kept the Titans in it, but he also took some brutal sacks that put the team in either 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down and forever situations, or it just completely killed drives. So, can't have that. It also didn't help, too, that receivers kept dropping on target balls that Ward gave them. But in general, it just shows that there's so much work to do for both the Titans and Cam Ward, even though it's just 1 week down and so many more to go. So you just have to, like I said, you have to keep your expectations in check if you're a Titans fan. Meanwhile, for the Denver Broncos, they didn't exactly play a great game, especially with Bo Nix playing a sloppy game with two interceptions. But if you want a positive, the ground game of J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey look kind of promising. Even though there were some question marks going into the year about this running back group, this duo got it going late into the game. 50-yard run from R.J. Harvey that set up J.K. Dobbins' touchdown. Like, if they can keep that going in the next couple weeks, it can elevate pressure off of Bo Nix. Then we have my San Francisco 49ers taking on the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, a battle of NFC West foes. Pretty sloppy game, in my opinion. Or you could also look at it as a defensive battle. But this, whatever affair you want to call it, went in favor of my Niners. Brock Purdy found backup tight end Jake Tongus for the go-ahead score. And Sam Darnold got strip-sacked by Nick Bosa on the following possession to win this game 14-10. And I got to say about my Niners, they had to get rid of Jake Moody after this game. Like, how in the hell do you shank a layup field goal 23 yards? 23 yards before the first half ended. And how the hell do you let one of your offensive linemen block a field goal? Now, I get the second one wasn't his fault entirely, but the first one was just absolutely absurd. And to the point that Kyle Shanahan was visibly, and the Fox cameras caught him so pissed off. Like, really, man? Just really? But we'll talk about Jake Moody more later because there's something major that happened about Jake Moody. For the Seahawks, their offense, it let the team down when it mattered most. Because their defensive front four, they had a really good showing, especially forcing Purdy to throw really stupid interceptions to Ernest Jones and Josh Joby. But unfortunately, the offense couldn't capitalize on either of them, along with the blocked field goal and a big 30-yard pass to Jackson Smith-Njigba in the final possession. So yeah, they also slowed down at times too. That connection to Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba, it wasn't exactly pretty. But like with most teams though, that side will have more time to adjust to each other because they didn't play a lot in the preseason. So yeah, I'd say give it a couple more weeks to let them adjust. And let's look at the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions, another division game, because this one was a pretty surprising result. And I don't mean for Green Bay side, but we'll get into that a bit. Because Jordan Love, he led 3 straight scoring drives, and the Packers never looked back in this game, neutralizing the Lions in a dominating division win, 27-13. Let's look at the Packers first, because Micah Parsons getting traded a couple of days prior to the season opener for the Pack from the Cowboys. He only played 29 snaps because, again, the timing of the trade, but he pressured Jared Goff a lot in this, and he forced an interception out of him before ending his day with a sack on Jared Goff. He really wanted to make sure to get that sack that he really wanted with 4 minutes left to go in the whole game. So Micah Parsons, he did a lot better than Aiden Hutchinson did in his return. So Micah Parsons, once he gets fully healthy, because I think he was dealing with like a back or foot issue or something, that front seven is going to be a serious force to deal with. Meanwhile, you look at the Detroit Lions. This was a really bad and uninspiring start for them under their new offensive and defensive coordinators, John Morton and Kelvin Shepard. Like, you go from Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn to this. Now, I get it. Growing pains were going to be expected. I expected a lot of growing pains, but this was really bad. Like, it's absurd. Like, you look at Morton's play calling. It's clearly not creative. It's more conservative than Ben Johnson's was, because you look at how Jared Goff was just throwing a bunch of short passes, and Jahmyr Gibbs was just running like as if he was just like not there. It's just like not being a creative runner like he was under Ben Johnson. Jahmyr Gibbs was severely limited. And where was David Montgomery? Like, did he get released? Did he leave in free agency? Like, where was he? But anyway, they didn't like start throwing the ball like beyond like 10 or 20 yards until the end of the game. Until the game was over, pretty much. Like, and then defensively, Kelvin Shepard's defense, they gave up 17 points on their first 3 drives, which pretty much allowed Jordan Love to score those 17 points. Even with the new addition of DJ Reed and the return of Aiden Hutchinson, they did terrible. They did terrible defensively, and they got to do better, especially with, Ben Johnson and the Bears coming to town next week. So then we have the LA Rams taking on the Houston Texans. And again, you can look at this game as a defensive battle or just a sloppy game. But either way, you have the game-changing play of Rams linebacker, a new one at that, Nate Ledman, forcing the game-sealing fumble on running back Dare Ogunbowale. And yeah, that sealed the win for the Rams over the Texans 14-9. And man, that Texans offensive line, well, not exactly great. Not exactly great news for them, even more. Ed Ingram was ruled out of the game before it started due to an injury. And then mid-game, Cam Robinson and Jake Andrews, they left because of injury. And that resulted in the offensive line shuffling even more for CJ Stroud. And that led to even more pressure for CJ Stroud in this game. Well, the more things change, the more things stay the same for the Houston Texans offensive line. Meanwhile, looking at the Rams, even though Matthew Stafford didn't look uncomfortable with his nagging back issue Sunday, He still didn't look. He didn't still exactly play highlight game, but he still, I guess, did enough to get to make the Rams win this game. But it was the defense that really shone or whatever, shine in this game, whatever the past tense word is. But either way, the defense really shined in this game. The Rams defense made the big game-winning play with that forced fumble from Nate Ladman. And I still believe that it's going to be the big highlight of this team. It's going to be the biggest strength of this team. So then we look at the Sunday Night Football game between the Bills and the Ravens in an AFC divisional rematch from last year. And it seemed like it was going to be over for the Buffalo Bills with less than 5 minutes to go. But then you have Ed Oliver forcing a fumble out of Derrick Henry, and that suddenly re-energized the Bills. They rapidly rallied back from a 15-point deficit to win on a Matt Prater field goal. And the Bills suddenly won 41-40 in a rapid flurry. And when you look at the Bills, I'd say this is one of their best team efforts under Josh Allen. It seemed like it was out of reach, and then you had that forced fumble from Derrick Henry, and then they just scored in a flurry. They just scored just like that. Got it within 2. Sure, it was a track meet that the Ravens pretty much had control of, but again, it was just that one big play that gave the Bills life on both sides of the ball, and in the end, the Bills won it and instilled confidence for next week and maybe even beyond. Meanwhile, for the Baltimore Ravens, man, how do you let this one get away? Like, Lamar Jackson and the offense played a really great game, and the defense, sure, they gave up a lot of points in this one before that complete collapse. But how do you not close this out? How do you not close this game out? Like, there was, like, even with the good play from Ed Oliver, like, how do you not have a sense of urgency or aggressiveness, John Harbaugh, to get Lamar to put the game away for good? Like, get aggressive, man. Be like Justin Herbert on the Friday after. Like, you have the sense of urgency of that the Bills were going to come back, and you got to shut this game down for good. So now you're Baltimore. They once again have to think about another one that got away. You have to head to your next matchup and be like, damn. So then we have the Monday Night Football game to close out week number 1 as we go into week 2. And it seemed like the Vikings were going to be out of sorts. They're the ones that looked buried after 3 quarters. But they woke up in the nick of time in the 4th quarter with their new quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. He led the Vikings to 3 straight touchdown drives in a comeback win over the Chicago Bears, 27-24. And looking at the Vikings, nice first impression for JJ. Now I gave him some leeway due to him giving it being his first real action after missing all of last year. It seemed like after the pick 6, I liked how he responded. And he responded in really strong fashion that spread throughout the entire team. They looked like a much different team after that, whether it be the players and the coaches. So I really like that from JJ. Still plenty of things for JJ to clean up along with the rest of the team. And while expectations are still not quite there yet, I still have them like on the lower side of things as they adjust to their technically rookie quarterback. Is still a nice first impression for J.J. McCarthy. Then when you look at the Chicago Bears, man, how the fuck do you mess up this game? They struck hot to start the game. It seemed like it was going to be a new version of the Bears. Caleb led an efficient opening drive and nabbed the Bears good offensive touchdown. But then it was back to your typical same old Bears football. After that, the offense really slowed down with self-induced penalties from the offensive line. The run game wasn't working. And then you had questionable throws from Caleb Williams. And then you had Ben Johnson, the new head coach, he also got too comfortable with the lead after being aggressive in the first half. So you have the Bears. It seemed like they're going to be a new version of themselves. But then, of course, you had the same old shit after all this time. So they're going to have to look back on this choke job, and they're going to have to rebound on a short week, especially with another division game coming up against an angry Lions team up next. So now looking at the winners and losers of week number 1, looking at the biggest winner, defensive tackle Ed Oliver of the Bills, notching that game-changing fumble of Derrick Henry that rallied the Bills back into the game against Baltimore. The Packers defense is also another winner, severely limiting Jared Goff in the offense to just 6 points prior to the touchdown, the garbage time touchdown in the fourth quarter. And Vikings quarterback JJ McCarthy rallying back the team from a major deficit in the fourth quarter, scoring 21 unanswered points in the fourth to win that game over the Bears on Monday night. And looking at the biggest losers from week 1, 49ers kicker Jake Moody, shanking that field goal, doinking it in Seattle, and then having his second field goal blocked. And that ultimately led to his release. That ultimately led to him getting released. We'll talk about again when we talk about our headlines going to week 2. And you never want to see a kicker, you never see anyone, including a kicker, lose their job. But hey, when you had multiple chances, and I'm surprised it took Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to keep him around for this long. But hey, it finally happened. The Miami Dolphins, they looked out of place again. They looked disinterested, uninterested in wanting to compete against the Indianapolis Colts. And that's why they're a loser this week. And then the Baltimore Ravens, they had that big lead over the Buffalo Bills, and they looked ready to put them away. And then that unfortunate, unlucky fumble from Derrick Henry, it pretty much sealed the game. And for some reason, they didn't. The Ravens and John Harbaugh didn't get aggressive enough to seal it for good, shut the door on that Bills comeback. So finally, we look at the top headlines going into week 2. The top 5 headlines heading into, I wouldn't say a pivotal week 2 because it's still way too early in the season, but going into week 2. How did the Chiefs respond to that upset loss in Brazil? They played okay, but there's still some things that were not that great. Like the defense gave up a chunk to Justin Herbert. Obviously, the Xavier Worthy injury depletes that receiving core even more. And they're going up against a Eagles team that handed their asses several months ago in New Orleans. It's a Super Bowl rematch, like very early. So how did the Chiefs respond to pretty much all of that in week 2? Then how do these first round rookies that pretty much had mixed debuts like Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, and then Travis Hunter, who was relatively quiet too in his debut, how do they continue to adjust to life in the NFL? And how will they break out eventually, starting with the next week and after? And then you look at the follow-up acts to the comeback wins from the Bills and the Ravens. Will they crash out? And I don't mean they'll get angry. Will they crash out in terms of momentum, or will they continue? Will they actually, keep the ball rolling and carry that momentum in their games? For the Bills, it'll be against the Jets, and for the Vikings, it'll be at home against the Falcons on Sunday night. And then looking at some news headlines, going way back to the Jaguars. The Jaguars trade their backup running back Tank Bigsby to the Philadelphia Eagles for some low round picks. It was a little surprising that they traded away Tank Bigsby, but at the same time, not really, because their running back room was pretty crowded with Travis Etienne and Brian Robinson. So it wasn't all that surprising, but at the same time, why do teams keep trading players to the Philadelphia Eagles? So I just hope the Jaguars won't regret it. And then finally, we talked about Jake Moody just moments ago. So the Niners waived Jake Moody, and then in comes in Eddie Pinheiro for the 49ers. So Eddie Pinheiro did, I'd say he was one of the more accurate kickers in the NFL, especially during his time with Carolina. He didn't miss most of the time, so that should be good news for San Francisco. But he didn't exactly do well when it came to long range 50-plus yard field goals. So that's something to watch out for. That's kind of a red flag. But hey, I guess it's better than Jake Moody. But yeah, this kicking thing is obviously going to be a season long storyline for the 49ers. Especially, let's see what week 2 will have in store as the Niners travel to New Orleans to take on the Saints. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you for this week 1 in review for you all. As yeah, we head towards week 2 the NFL season in 2025. Obviously, we'll talk about those games in the next the next edition of our weekly roundup in the NFL. And yeah, we'll talk about our biggest winners, losers, our takeaways, and our headlines going to week 3. So yeah, pretty lengthy. And nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed it. But anyway, that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna. Thank you for tuning into this episode number 284 of this icy yet spicy podcast. Again, thank you for being patient with me. I know it's late and out of date. This week 1 review of the 2025 NFL season, but thank you for being patient with me in getting this out. Some technical difficulties, but we got it out there. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. And like I said, keep that icy yet spicy lasagna in the fridge with your takes. And until the next one, peace out.